Hello, this is Mallory Livingston. I'm an attorney in upstate New York, and I work for the Volunteer Lawyers Project of Onondaga County, which is centered in Syracuse. I run the LGBT rights program, and one of the most popular features of that program is transgender name changes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. This is not meant to provide you with any legal advice. If you need an attorney, I hope you'll contact our organization so that we can help you. This is purely meant for educational purposes. The LGBT rights program, in addition to doing free name and gender marker changes for transgender people, also provide direct representation to the LGBT community in a variety of other areas where they all too frequently experience discrimination, whether that be in employment, public accommodations, housing, health insurance, or even at the hands of the Syracuse Police Department. Our core area of service is a 13-county area in central New York that stretches from Jefferson County, which is where Watertown is, up in the north, down to Binghamton in the south, and roughly from Auburn to the west to Albany in the east. However, if you're an LGBT person and you're experiencing discrimination in any other county, you should still call us, because if there isn't an organization that can help you along the same terms that we can in those counties, then we will be happy to work with you. This will show you the core area of service where we do our work, but the next slide will show you that we don't really stay in that area. Everywhere you see a rainbow is a county where we've represented an LGBT person experiencing discrimination or done a name change for a transgender person. In the last year, we've handled 256 cases in 34 different counties. So odds are, if you're in a county north of the Bronx and you need assistance, we can help you. This gives you an idea of how many cases we've handled in each of the counties where we have done work. Onondaga County, number 20 on that list, is where we've done most of our work. We've had 81 cases in that area, but we've been up in St. Lawrence County, we've been over to Jefferson County, we've been down in Dutchess County, and everywhere in between. Now, why are transgender people changing their name, or LGBT people in general changing their names? Why is there a need for our services? Well, for trans people, it helps them to establish and to reinforce their gender identities, which are often challenged by the world at large. It is also a required step to obtain identity papers so that you can get all of your identity papers in alignment. It's not unusual for a transgender person during their transition to have identity documents that, in terms of what their gender is, are mixed. Some may say male, some may say female, and that can get you in trouble with the authorities. Even a simple pullover by a police officer can suddenly become very difficult, because the officer might view you with suspicion because your identity documents are not in alignment. The first step to getting your documents in alignment, whether it's a passport, a driver's license, a student ID, a social security card, the first step is to get a court-ordered name change. All the entities which control those identity documents have their own rules established as to how you change them, and all of them require you to have a court-ordered name change. So that's the first step you have to do to get all your identity documents in alignment. This can be a safety issue for folks. We found that people's safety is enhanced if you're trans, if people don't know that you're trans. And if you have a gender presentation that is stereotypically female, but then your name is Ralph or Frank, and people hear that, then they immediately know that you're trans. And however personally jarring that might be, the even worse effect, I think, is it can jeopardize your safety. So having a name that matches your gender expression and your gender identity, apart from the personal satisfaction and the honoring of your gender identity that comes with that, it also provides you with a measure of safety. Trans people also change their names for some of the same reasons that everybody else does, like to establish a singular family unit. You could have people who form a family and everybody's got a different last name, and one way to build that family unit is to adopt a single name. I actually have done 1 or 2 name changes which involved every member of the family, not just the transgender person. But so these are for all these reasons, getting a name change done is vital for lots of LGBT folks and especially transgender persons. Now, how is this done? Well, it turns out that in the United States, you have a common law right to change your name. You can call yourself whatever you want within reason. You can't use something that's confusing like Egyptian hieroglyphics or something like that. You can't do something that's fraudulent. You can't name yourself Elvis Presley and start dressing like him and see if you can walk into Graceland without paying the entrance fee. You have to, but other than those basic rules, you can call yourself anything you want. Transgender people did not invent name changes. People have been changing their names throughout US history. And it's been well established that they have a right to do that. And the way it was done in the old days is you just stopped using your old name and started using the new name and were consistent about it. And over time, that through usage, that became your new name. However, try to open a bank account that way. Try to apply for a passport that way. In the modern world, that's not going to work. And that's why New York State passed a law allowing its citizens to get a court-ordered name change. And they did this not because there was all sorts of crazy name changing going on that they felt the courts needed to get a hold of and corral. They did it to assist New York citizens, to make it easier to change their name than this whole common law name change process. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about changing your name, is that the law is on your side on this one. And the statute isn't meant to set up hurdles and to block you from exercising the common law right you have to change your name. It's actually meant to make it easier. The main statute that we rely on is Civil Rights Law Article 6. It has several parts to it. The first part, Section 60, just tells us what the basic requirements are. Is you have to be 18 years old or older to file for a name change on your own. If you're under 18, you can still change your name, but you have to have a parent or guardian file the papers for you. What papers do you have to file? You have to file what's known as a petition. All it is a legal document that tells the court who you are, what you want to do, and what is the legal basis for the action you're requesting. And the action you're requesting is for the court to issue an order changing your name from Bobby to Susie, from Susie to Bobby, or whatever. And the statute, all we have to do in that petition is to lay out what is required in the statute. You have to prove who you are, where you were born, what your date of birth was. You have to provide a certified copy of your birth certificate. You have to have some proof of your residence. It's not like you have to have like a photograph if you're stepping out of your house, a sworn statement by you that you reside at a given place is all that's necessary. And that residence is important because the way this is done is these name changes are applied for in the county where you reside. So if you live in Onondaga County, then we file it in Onondaga County Supreme Court. If you live in Lewis County, it's Lewis County Supreme Court, and so on. So it's important to know what residence you have so that we know where we should file. A person can have more than one residence. Sometimes this is not unusual with college students. All residence means in terms of this statute is your physical presence in that place. It doesn't have to be your domicile or where you live most of the year or an intention for it to be a permanent address or any of that. So for example, if you're a college student who is, live with their parents in Washington County, but you're going to law school at Syracuse University, then we could file here in Onondaga County. You have to report certain violent felonies, bankruptcies, other issues. This is just so the court knows that you're not trying to evade responsibility, whether it be post-release supervision, if you've had a problem with a prior conviction, or maybe you owe somebody some money, maybe it's child support, maybe it's a credit card company or whatever. It doesn't stop you from changing your name. There's just some additional hoops that you have to go through. The basics of the name change, as I said, we file this in the county where you live. If you are under 18, we have to give notice to your parents or legal guardian. So if your parents are split up and one parent is helping you with the name change and the other parent is against it, then we have to bring them in and give them notice that this is happening and give them a chance to object. It's very unusual for there ever to be a hearing with a name change. These are all decided on papers. Occasionally, a court will ask for a hearing. That most likely occurs when you have two parents who disagree over the name change. And it's not unusual in that situation for the judge to have a short hearing so the parent who's objecting to the name change can speak their piece. Again, some of these problems don't really stop you from getting your name changed. There's just additional hoops, and we've faced this many times in the cases that we've handled, so we're well equipped to assist you. If you're successful with your name change, and all of our name changes, at least with our organization, are 100% successful. Everybody gets their name changed. Some of them just take longer than others. At the end of this process, the prize is a court order that changes your name. It'll have your date and place of birth on it. It'll have your old name and your new name on it. And in New York, there is a part of the statute requires you to publish the name change in a newspaper. However, for transgender persons, there's an we believe we can get that requirement waived. And in about 99.9% of our cases, we get that requirement waived. What the statute says is that if publication will endanger the personal safety of the applicant, then the publication requirement is waived and the records are sealed from the public. And for transgender people, unfortunately, the climate of violence and discrimination and harassment against them is so bad that we feel that publishing a transgender name change in a newspaper exposes our clients to some bad actors and can certainly endangers their personal safety. And we've really yet to have any court disagree with us on that particular point. And so in almost all of our cases, that requirement will be waived. This also might be a good time to mention that our services are free and that we do not have an income test. So your income is irrelevant. The only reason we ask about that when we talk to our clients is it does make a difference as to whether or not the court will waive its filing fee. The court has a $210 filing fee unless your family income is 200% of the federal poverty level or below. And so if you meet that requirement, we can get that waived. Regardless, you still don't have to pay for our services. So the most that this would cost you if you went through our organization is $210. Now, the publication, if you were required once, all you do is contact the local newspaper, ask them about their legal notice sections, tell them you've got a name change that you need published. They'll know what you're talking about. They'll take down the information and they'll publish it, and they'll also provide you with an affidavit of publication. So you can take that to the county clerk to show that you followed that requirement. But again, almost nobody has to go through that. Other problems that you might have might require additional notifications. For example, if you owe child support to a former spouse, the court might require that we just notify them of the name change, so that if in the future you're not current with your child support payments and they have to try to find you, that they'll be able to do that despite the name change. 64A is where the law sets out the exception of for the publication requirement that we just spoke about. All you have to do is show that it would endanger your personal safety based on a totality of the circumstances, and the case law that we've seen that defines what that means covers the transgender people who face a pervasive climate of violence and harassment. So we rely on that heavily and with great success. These are the rules with regard to the fee waiver, and because we're a legal aid society, you only have to talk to us about your income. You don't have to necessarily provide proof of your income to the courts. We will go over that with you, and we'll create the documents that will entitle you to the fee waiver. You won't have to worry about having to undergo any inquiries from the court. Now, if you came to our organization, one of the first things that we would, for a name change, one of the first things we would do is do an intake with you, and this is what the intake form looks like. And if you peruse some of the questions on there, it follows closely the requirements of the statute. We ask what your new name's going to be, what's your old name as it appears on your birth certificate. We ask you whether or not you're married, whether you've got any spousal support obligations, child support obligations. There's some questions, brief questions there about income to see if you qualify for the waiver of the filing fee, and some biographical information in terms of where we were born, what county, and so on. Are you a citizen of the U.S., etc. If you're not a citizen of the U.S., you can still get your name changed in New York. Again, almost none of these are obstacles. It just means there's additional work that we have to do. We also, if you're under 18, we need information regarding your parents, especially if both parents are supportive. If one is not, then I know that we're going to have to probably have a hearing, or maybe I need to talk to that parent, and perhaps if I answer their questions and whatnot, maybe they'll change their mind, and then we can have the whole thing done based on consent. Next, I'm going to show you a little bit about what's in some of the documents that we had actually filed. This is a caption for a name change petition, and it's pretty basic. You notice that it says County of Jefferson. This one was filed in Jefferson County because that's where the person lived. If you were under 18, instead of having your name on the caption, we would have the name of your parents or legal guardians, and we would use initials for your name to help preserve your anonymity as much as possible. This is where the body of the petition starts. You can see, like, it starts off just establishing your residence, where it is that you live, and what you want, which is to change your name from Bobby to Susie. We give some information as to where you were born, and we attach a certified copy of your birth certificate. And then we basically go through one by one, ticking off all the boxes in the statute. Have you been convicted of crime? No. Have you been adjudicated bankrupt? No, etc. This is the section where we lay the groundwork for the waiver of publication, and it cites several cases where it was held that the pervasive climate of violence, harassment, discrimination against transgender people is so bad that publication of their name changes would endanger their safety. And then we have a couple of paragraphs here where we just tell that sometimes you run into a judge who's not willing to seal all the records, or maybe not willing to waive publication, and then we ask for sort of intermediate relief. Like if you're going to require them to publish, can we at least keep their address out, so that if some bad actor reads it and wants to do harm to a transgender person, that publication doesn't become a map to a crime scene. And these just show that how the grounds, or you really don't have to prove all that much as to why you want to change your name. You don't really have to give them an explanation. But I found that if you give a judge some information, your life is going to be a little bit easier on this. And so, so we do give them some information that essentially the person wants to change their name. That's why they're doing it. The law allows them to do it based on that. And that they have been using the name for a certain amount of time. Sometimes with minors, although we don't tend to do this anymore, I found that if we provide some medical information, that there's been a diagnosis and appropriate consultation with professionals, that it can save my clients the necessity of going to a hearing and meeting with the judge and explaining to the judge why they're doing what they're doing. So we used to include this clause here, which is a citation to a case that allows us to use the pronouns that the client prefers. But I've since taken those out because I really don't like this notion of a preferred gender identity. It's not a preferred gender identity, it's a gender identity, plain and simple. Just as firm and as established as anybody else's. It's not a preference, it's a reality. So we don't use that one anymore. Instead, what we've done is we've eliminated the use of pronouns in any of our petitions. But that's the kind of subtle points that an organization like ours is aware of, because we do so many of them, and because I'm transgender myself. So I'm pretty sensitive to how painful some of these issues can be. There's additional documents that we file depending on the situation. If you're going to have the filing fee waived, we have to file a poor person order, which that's a horrible title, but that's what they call it. And you have to do a request for judicial intervention, a temporary sealing order, which seals the documents during the pendency of the action. Once the judge grants the name change and signs that final order, that there's language in there that will seal that order. But before that, in the interim period, while the judge is thinking about what to do with this name change application, we also want the records sealed, and that's what the temporary sealing order is for. If you're a minor age 14 or over, the judge, although you can't file for this on your own, the judge is going to want to hear from you, and so we do an affidavit of consent for you to sign, so that the the courts knows that you're not being like forced into changing your name by villainous parents. Their local practices, each county has their own way of doing things, and sometimes each judge within that county has a way of doing things. And because we've worked in so many counties, we decided to keep track of these things, and so we're aware of the local practices that are going on in different places. I could tell you all the different peccadillos of each judge in Onondaga County, what will make them happy and what makes them not so happy. The interesting thing about name changes is they can be filed with the courts electronically. There in New York, there was a number of counties that did not allow that, and you still had to do it the old-fashioned way with snail mail. But one of the few positive effects that come out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that they now virtually, I think there's only maybe 4 or 5 counties left in the entire state that do not have e-filing. And I'm not going to try to teach you how to e-file, but just so you can see what it looks like. There's a computer screen where you select what court you're going to. You select, like this selection was Tompkins County Supreme Court, and then what type of case you're doing, a name change. Then you put in the names. This was some parents that were doing a name change. And you file each document one by one. And you do a request for a judicial intervention, which is just a document that results in you being assigned a judge. A lot of cases go along on their own for a long while without a judge ever being assigned to it because it's not needed. Now, we don't just do name changes. We also help you with gender markers. And the most important one is to get a new birth certificate that has your new name and a new gender marker on it. The rules have loosened up quite a bit in that. And really just the last couple of months, there's been a few major changes. It used to be we had to put in a medical affidavit to change a gender marker on a birth certificate. You no longer need to do that. And it used to be that your only gender marker choices were male and female, but now you can choose X if you're a gender non-binary person. And again, we can do this work for you. You can do it yourself, but if you're lazy like me, you would rather have a free lawyer do it, and that's what we are. So we've done a ton of these things. So we have all the papers ready to go, and really the main thing we need is a court-ordered name change, which is all the stuff we just talked about, and that would result in you having that order. And then once you have that order, there's just a couple of documents we need you to fill out and have notarized, and then we can send that into the Department of Health, and between 4 weeks to 6 months, you'll hear from the Department of Health, and they'll send you a new birth certificate that has the correct gender marker on it and your new name. And really, with those two documents, that court-ordered name change and a new birth certificate that's all in alignment, you can then use those as the foundations to change the gender markers and the names on all of your other documents, like your driver's license, your passport, your social security card. So that's the end of our presentation. I hope you give us a call. My name is Mallory Livingston. You can reach me at 315-849-9234. And if I'm not there, just leave a message. You guys have a great night. Take care.